he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Tomorrow Man 100 back again with another episode of How's My Team. It's Sunday morning when I'm recording the start of this video. Obviously we're going to talk about the Titans teams and we're also going to talk about the Giants' last game of the season against the Saints. Obviously at the time of this recording they play today, but we'll talk about both of the Titans games. We don't have to talk about obviously anything else other than that because Liverpool don't play until Tuesday this week, so we'll be talking about them next week. So let's start with the Titans and let's see how the results panned out. So yes, I'm wearing my Giants jersey. I'll be wearing that out to the game that I'm going to today. Won't be the Giants game. The Giants are playing at home this afternoon. Against the Saints, but I have prior engagements, so I'm going to Leichhardt to watch the Tigers play the Cowboys with my dad and a couple of my dad's friends from work from many years ago, when obviously I wasn't living down here on near the coast. But let's talk about the Titans. Let's get started with the Titans men's team because we're going to get the shit out of the way. And with that reaction, you can definitely tell they lost again. They lost at home in the doubleheader against the Warriors, 32 points to 18. And I don't know. It's a tale as old as time. Not enough effort. Ultimately, of course, the Newcastle Knights are still going to play the Broncos today, later this afternoon, in the early game on today, on Sunday. So their for and against is pretty close to ours. But ours is well over 200 in the minus. So yeah, that's great for that. Obviously, it was looking like it was going to be a lot worse in terms of the result. I think the result kind of complements the Titans a little bit because they didn't play well at all. Errors again running rampant in their game, and the Warriors just did what they needed to do at this point, because at this point, obviously with the Titans men, they've only got 2 games left now after this game. They've got the Dolphins, who have a chance to get into the top 8, with the Sydney Roosters going down to the Eels last night, and obviously the Tigers have still got to play today. So if the Tigers end up winning over the Cowboys, they'll jump into 26 points and have a chance to go into the top 8 with 2 games to play. And they'll be with Manly and the Dolphins in 11th on the same amount of points, just as their for and against is at minus 100. And let me have a look for a minute. Obviously, we're still on the bottom of the ladder. Minus 107. So if they can make up any points on that, obviously Manly are ahead of them on plus 4, and the Dolphins are in front of them on plus 81. So it depends on obviously the 2 results for Manly and the Dolphins, as well as obviously the Roosters, who have actually got Melbourne Storm next week. So that's going to be interesting. I think they're without Sam Walker as well, which to a concussion, so that's not good for them, and could cost them the top 8 spot really if they lose to Melbourne. But yeah, so it's just not good enough, especially in front of the fans at home, for the Titans men's team. I don't I think we're just waiting for the season to finish at this point, because the effort is there after when the game is done. Like the effort, like they've scored 2 tries in the last like 10 minutes, I think it was. Yeah, 2 tries in the space of, yeah, they scored twice in the space of 4 or 5 minutes in the second half, like towards the end of the game, when the game was well and truly done. And yeah, I think they're just waiting for the end of the season to come, which obviously they got the Dolphins next week at Suncorp, and then they're at home against the Tigers in the last 2 games of the season. And now for and against, yeah, is at minus 201 right now. And obviously the Knights at this point, in terms of recording it, are minus 186, but they've still got to play the Brisbane Broncos, who injury ravaged in their own right. So we'll see what happens with the Broncos, whether they still pick up a win or not. But yeah, obviously the Tigers being 2 points behind 10th and 9th at this point in time, they've got to play today as well. But yeah, it just makes that bottom 4 look interesting, because obviously with the Eels winning, the Rabbits go back down to 14th, but obviously do jump the Cowboys obviously with a win. And then obviously the Eels don't win next week, the Rabbitohs will jump again another 2 points in front of the Eels and the Dragons, and they'll be on the same amount of points as the Tigers are right now. So they'll jump into 12th next week, I think it is. I think they have the bye next week. So yeah, so it's basically a 2-horse race at this point, for the bottom, for the wooden spoon, obviously for the Knights and the Titans at this point. If the Knights obviously don't win today against the Broncos, then it's a bottom two, like it's 2 teams clashing for the bottom, and it's really for and against, and it's the Titans are got to pick up a win. They got to pick up a win. Whether it's a good win or not is another question. But obviously the Tigers in the last round is not a great situation to be in, because they'd be playing for finals or faint finals hopes, because obviously the Roosters faltering last night, and then obviously going up against the Storm as well. That's not an easy game either for the Roosters. They've won against the Storm before, but with some players out, you never know what happens, and I feel like they're going to be have their backs against the wall and possibly could lose their spot, because obviously the Dolphins for and against is much better at this point, and obviously the Dolphins are going to play us at Suncorp on Saturday, I think it is. Sunday. So it's a 4:00 game. We don't play till Saturday I'm thinking of the last round, which is a Saturday game. But yeah, so it was pretty average, especially during the middle of the game. Like they scored first, so they scored in the first couple of minutes, and Tino went under for a try. So we thought maybe that we might have had a better result. But yeah, it's not 54 points, obviously, as it was for the Sharks last week, but 32, still another 30 plus total score result for a team against the Titans, which has happened quite a lot this year. But yeah, it's just spluttering towards the finish at this point, and doing it in front of fans like this, it's just, yeah. You can see why people are not showing up to home games, because the effort is just non-existent from a lot of the players on the team, and it's just annoying. It's just annoying. But yeah, 32 points to 18. Titans men go down under the Warriors. The Warriors obviously keep their top 4 spot alive at this point. I thought they were on the same amount of points as the Bulldogs, and I thought maybe the Warriors might have jumped to the Bulldogs, but they're still 2 points behind the Bulldogs at this point, who obviously lost, but they go up against the Bulldogs go up against Penrith, and the Warriors also go up against the Eels this upcoming week. So with the Panthers obviously dropping to 6th, if they if the Broncos win, they'll jump the Panthers. So the Panthers will go from, in the last 2 weeks, going from 4th right down to 7th if the Broncos win today. So very, very interesting results with the Penrith Panthers. And obviously they've got to play the Bulldogs next week. So it's another big test for both clubs, considering that both of them have come off a couple of losses in a row. And both of their form going into finals has not been ideal, but one of them you would think has got to win. And obviously Penrith have been relatively close the last 2 games as well, including obviously losing in Golden Point against Canberra. But yeah, it's just one step closer to that wooden spoon, which we don't want. But if we can find a win in the last 2 weeks, maybe there's a chance. And again, the Dumb and Dumber meme, so you're saying there's a chance. That's basically what we're putting our hope on at this point. At least in lighter news, the first game of the doubleheader in terms of the Titans women's team, they actually won. They won by 18 points, 22 points to 4 over the Dragons at home. And it was a much different result for the Titans women than it was for the men. The effort was there for a lot of the game. The score actually could have been a lot more. I think there was a try that was there's at least one try that was disallowed, I think from both teams rather, this game. So it could have been the same margin. I think the call on the last try attempt from the Dragons was the correct call, that it was knocked on at dummy half, as the dummy half, because when watching the highlights, because obviously didn't watch the game, or at least much of it, I think I went on break just before the game actually started. It looked like from the behind angle that the dummy half's going to pick up the ball, has kind of knocked it forward slightly, and then picked up the ball again and then gone over, like Sam Verrills did a couple of weeks back at home for that try to give us a chance in the men's game a couple of weeks back. What was that game? That game was against, who was it against? Against the Rabbits. That's the one. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago in the Spoon Bowl, that he picked up. Obviously, he picked up from dummy half and went through the line. They had a similar situation with the Dragons women's trying to score their second try of the game. Had a similar thing, but similar situation. But I think from the behind angle, it looked like it was knock on. From the forward angle, it was a bit hard to tell. But there wasn't. I think with the bunker, at least there wasn't enough evidence to overturn the fact that it was knocked on, which is always one of those things that if you have evidence, like a heap of evidence against that, thankfully it will be most likely called from bunker. Obviously, sometimes the bunker can miss it. So at this point, it puts us at 7 points, puts us in 6th with that result. Obviously, there's a few other games still to play at this point. Obviously, teams around us, I think the Roosters obviously have played, but the Broncos, Knights, Cowboys, Sharks, Warriors, and the Tigers haven't played yet. So at this point in time, only the Warriors, who played the Sharks today, can jump in front of us. So we could drop to 7th still, but that is a massive result, considering that obviously the Eels went down to the Roosters, and the Roosters have already confirmed their spot in finals for the women's team, with obviously how many games to play? Like 3 or 4 games? 3 games to play at this point. So they've already played 8 games already. So having it with 3 weeks left, pretty good result for the Roosters. Obviously, the Roosters have been undefeated at this point. But again, being undefeated isn't necessarily a good thing. Obviously, in recent history with the NRLW, the only other team I can remember that had like an unbeaten streak like this was obviously the Broncos, and that was their early dominance, obviously with the first couple of premierships, the first 3. because obviously at the start it was only a 4-team competition back then, and obviously the Broncos were pretty dominant pretty early on. But obviously the Roosters being the defending premiers from last year, in a good result. So obviously our season record at the moment is 3 wins, 1 draw, and 4 losses, and 2-2 from the last 5 games. Obviously with that draw, so it'd be 2-1-2 or 2-2-1. With the way that the NFL does it, is that they do the wins, the losses, and then the draws or the ties afterwards. It's kind of a weird situation, but but yeah, so obviously we've jumped to 6th, jumped from 9th, I believe, to 6th, with that win, obviously on 7 points. Obviously that draw, like I said a couple of weeks back, that draw probably could help us get into finals, because obviously with the teams around us at the moment, obviously we've got the Sharks in front of us on 8 points, with a game to play for them. We're on 7 in 6th. And then both the Warriors and the Eels are in 7th and 8th behind us on 6 points. And then the Bulldogs are in 9th with 5, which obviously they lost to Canberra pretty heavily. So so the Bulldogs for and against is actually the same as the Eels right now. And obviously our for and against is worse than the Warriors at this point. So the Warriors, if they win, they'll jump anyway, because obviously the points difference. But yeah, it's not a bad result actually. And in fact, obviously last week, obviously the Tigers and the Raiders both won. So there's no team that hasn't won a game in the NRLW so far. Obviously the Raiders have gotten 2 on the trot, and are looking pretty good. Obviously their for and against is minus 130 still, even though they won by like 30 on Friday night. Sorry, actually no, early yesterday. Sorry, I thought that they played Friday night, but they didn't. No, they're playing Saturday and Sunday games now, basically. But yeah, so it's a good result for the Titans women's team. Obviously, getting into 6th position. Obviously, can drop out to 7th with the Warriors win today over the Sharks. But obviously, the Sharks are in front of us at the moment, and they only just beat us. But when it comes to the Warriors, who knows at this point, because they fight and fight and fight with everything they got. So not an easy team to beat. Obviously, yes, we did beat them, but they weren't playing nearly as well at that point. But yes, we got the Eels on Sunday at Seabus. It's another home game for the women's team. Obviously, the men's will be on the Saturday beforehand and will be at Suncorp. But yeah, it'll be the 6:15 game, so it's the last game of the round for the Titans women's. So it'll be interesting to see how they go, because obviously that is 6th versus 8th at this present time, but it could be 7th versus 8th with a Warriors win. And then obviously after that, we go to Newcastle and then come back home against the Raiders in the last round of the NRLW season. But obviously it being 6 teams this year, obviously there's 1 less game in terms of the finals. 2 less games, 1 round less. So obviously they'll be finishing up on grand final day. Obviously their grand final will be on the same day as the men's. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously you would think that the Roosters and the Broncos are the teams to beat right now, but obviously Newcastle are sitting there. Obviously they've still got to play against the Broncos today, so they're in a situation where they could tie up into 2nd position in terms of points, which is obviously the for and against on the Broncos side of things is way better than Newcastle at this point. And then obviously the Cowboys have still got to play the Tigers today as well, and they could also jump to 12 points. So it is a situation where it's getting pretty consolidated on the top. The fact that the Titans are sitting around that 5th and 6th position is not a bad situation to be in. Problem will be, I think, the way that it probably will be is probably 3rd versus 6th and 4th versus 5th. in terms of finals, and at this point, it would be the Knights that we'd be playing in finals if the competition stopped today, and with all the other games not taken into account. If it was the end of the season, we'd be playing them. I think is how it works out, with obviously the Roosters and the Broncos getting the week off in the first week of the finals, and then obviously they'll play in the semis. I would imagine that's probably how it works out. Obviously, we'll see what the bracket looks like in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. But yeah, 22 points to 4 over the Dragons. The Dragons obviously not playing as well as they probably should be. They're in 10th at the moment. But win is a win, and obviously gets us into a contention for finals. Obviously not a top 2 spot. Obviously, I think that those 2 spots are almost consolidated at this point. At least one of them obviously is with the Roosters. They could drop a couple of games and still be in. I think they got 3 games left. If they win next week, which they go up against the Cowboys next week, if they win next week, they pretty much confirmed for a top 2 finish. So the Roosters are basically the team to beat at the moment. But again, finals is a completely different beast altogether. Sometimes your form in terms of how well you're doing during the season, and the Titans women even showed it against the Roosters a couple of years ago. Said, you might have momentum in terms of playing well, but a team can beat you on their best day. So we'll see what happens. But 22 points to 4 over the Dragons for the Titans women's, great result. And yeah, could be a little bit happier. Could have won by more, but it's a great result, great win nonetheless. Decent amount of points as well. So 18 points is a good jumping point. But we'll see how we go next week against the Eels at home. Alright, well, instead of recording this on Monday like I was expecting to record yesterday, it's officially Tuesday. So it's literally the day before this video goes up. Didn't mean to record it this late, but obviously yesterday morning, a few things happened, and by the time that I could record, it was only a short amount of time before I had to go to work anyway. So delayed. Obviously recording this part of the video. It's not too early, but sleep the last couple of nights has not been great for me. So if I look like shit, I apologise. But we're going to talk about the Giants. That's the main reason we're making this part of the video, because obviously we haven't talked about the Giants yet. Obviously went down to watch the Tigers game, which at the end of the segment, I'll post some pictures of where we were sitting. We were sitting about 3 or 4 rows back from the sideline. And obviously it was towards the in-goal area. So, definitely getting a bit of traffic, not too much, but obviously it was a good enough game to watch. But yeah, let's talk about the Giants. So ultimately they were 1 foot in the finals. I think they still had a chance if crazy things happened to mathematically miss the finals and come 9th. But they did what they had to do, and they won against the Saints at home in the last game of the home away season, last home game of the home and away season as well. And they won by 11 points over the Saints, 104 to 93, and it was 15 goals 14 to 14 goals 9. So not as accurate as we would have liked from the Giants, but there were situations in the game where St Kilda were very much competitive and in control, and got ahead of the Giants in quite a few parts of the game, including over at halftime. They were ahead by 1 point. So fantastic result for the Giants, because that means that whoever we play, and obviously we still have a game tomorrow at the time of this recording, but when this video goes up, it will be the day of. The Gold Coast is still going to play the extra game against Essendon to make up the finals, to make up for that game for opening round. Obviously, that was delayed due to the cyclones earlier this year. And then in their situation right now, they're in ninth still, with percentage being the key factor keeping them out. But thankfully for them, Fremantle did win against the Western Bulldogs, so the Suns have got a chance to go into the finals, and the Bulldogs are basically their finals hopes are hanging by a thread at this point. Still possible, obviously they need Essendon to win over the Suns, but the Suns obviously against Essendon you would think would win that game and come into the finals and possibly be in 7th, which possibly would push Hawthorn out to 8th. So thankfully with the position that the Giants are in, obviously we moved up a place to 5th. We were in 4th for quite a bit, and then obviously Brisbane ended up winning over Hawthorn. So they ended up cementing a top 4 spot, obviously pushing out the Giants to 5th. So we did gain a spot, which was great because no matter what, in terms of where we were staying from where we were or moving up in position, we're hosting an elimination final anyway. It'll just obviously depend on what day it would be, I think, for those 2 matches. Because we play 8th, I think that's how it goes. So it'd be 1st versus 4th, 2nd versus 3rd, which is already confirmed. The top 4 have confirmed because obviously Gold Coast lost to Port Adelaide in Ken Hinkley and Travis Boak's last game for the Power. So, you know, another situation where the Gold Coast Suns obviously have not won at the Adelaide Oval. Not a great record to have, and obviously they had a double chance begging for them to finish in top 4, and they kind of squandered it with the last couple of games. But thankfully with that win over the Gold Coast Suns, the Giants did jump and hold on to their destiny basically. And so the Giants will be hosting an elimination final. So obviously if the Giants were to go all the way to the grand final, they have to go the long way, they have to play the extra game. But they can play anyone from Hawthorn, who are in 7th at the moment, in terms of this recording. The Western Bulldogs are officially in 8th at the moment, and then the Gold Coast Suns are in 9th. So, depending on the result of the Gold Coast Suns game against Essendon, if they do win, they jump to 60 points, and they will jump to 7th. You would think if their percentage is going to, like if they win by 5 or more goals, I think it is, against Essendon, they will jump into 7th and Hawthorn will be pushed to 8th. So then the Giants will be playing Hawthorn in the first week of the finals, as will Fremantle be playing the Gold Coast. And the thing is, if the Gold Coast do get into 7th, well, basically either way, wherever they end up, whether it's going to be 7th or 8th, because they can't go any higher than that, they're in a situation where they're going to have to travel anyway. So they're going to either be travelling to New South Wales to play the Giants, or they're going to be travelling all the way over to Western Australia to play the Fremantle Dockers. So it's not a great situation for the Gold Coast Suns, though they could still, if they went against the Giants or went against Freo, they could still obviously possibly win an elimination final. But obviously first final series, it's going to be very important for them if they do make it. Obviously at this point in time they're outside, so haven't made it quite yet, but they do have to win the game against Essendon to get into the finals for the Suns. But yes, so the Giants 11-point win, scrappy win, many clutch moments, great for Harry Himmelberg's 200th to go away with a win. Obviously a great send-off for Callum Ward, who obviously is retiring at the end of this year. He announced it a couple of weeks ago. I thought maybe there was a possibility that he might have been playing another year just to see how the Giants go, but obviously that injury has kind of put him out of his playing career in general. I hope that he ends up being associated with the team in some form or fashion, whether it's through coaching, whether it's like an advisory role in some kind, like something like player welfare and then that sort of thing. I would love that, because I think that he's one of those guys that's been there since the start. and he's a class act. He's been very close. He's made it to a grand final, obviously, in 2019. Obviously, going down heavily in that game, but still made a grand final. And yeah, so thank you to Callum Ward. But show's not over. Home and away season is done, and finals have started, and it's a whole different ball game. Well, I'd say home and away for the Giants has started, it's finished, and the final series for the Giants has started in a couple of days. When this goes up, it'll be started because we'll know what the result will be towards the end of the night when this goes up. So, but 11-point win, they did what they had to do, the Giants, against the Saints. The Saints very gracious in defeat. Obviously, I think we're coming off, I think it was a 3-win streak or 4-win streak. And ultimately, they ended up putting St Kilda in 12th at the end of the home away season. So they did pretty well towards the end of the season. Masked up 36 points at one stage. Obviously, they're in the bottom 4. Obviously, Essendon are down there at the moment. So most of the other places of the ladder are all sorted. So the Adelaide Crows ended up becoming the minor premiers, going from 15th last year right up to 1st. So big swing in a year. Geelong in 2nd, Brisbane in 3rd, Collingwood in 4th. Then the Giants in 5th, Fremantle in 6th. Then 7th, 8th, 9th. At the moment it's Hawthorn, Western Bulldogs, Gold Coast. But again, with that Gold Coast game, that could change. Then 10th is the Sydney Swans. Huge move for them, because I think they ended up finishing the home and away season on top of the ladder last year. So that's, big slide for them. Carlton after them in 11th, St Kilda in 12th, Port Adelaide in 13th, Melbourne in 14th, Essendon in 15th, North Melbourne in 16th, Richmond in 17th, and the West Coast Eagles with 1 win on the bottom of the ladder in 18th position. Now, obviously, Essendon will not move. If they do win, they'll go to tie with Melbourne on 28 points, but their percentage is well under Melbourne's percentage at this point in time, so they will not move from the bottom 4 if they do win against the Gold Coast Suns. And whereas if the Gold Coast do win, obviously they'll jump to 60 points and push the Western Bulldogs out of the 8, and if they win by enough, will push Hawthorn down into 8th position. But obviously, plenty of permutations, combinations to go with that. But Giants did what they had to do. They had to win by 11 points. They had to win to make sure that they did make finals. And ultimately, a win obviously was going to help that, but a win was ultimately going to help with a home elimination final, and thankfully they have won by 11 points over the Saints at NG Stadium for the last home and away season game for the Giants. And that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. Obviously, we got the Giants making finals, which is a fantastic result for them. Obviously, not in the top 4, but we dropped a game here or there, which possibly could have been made up into the top 4. Ultimately, we're on the same amount of points, it's only just percentage, which obviously the loss against the Bulldogs definitely hurt us in that regard. Because if we had more percentage than Collingwood, which obviously they were only maybe 10 percentage points in front of us, could have possibly gotten to 4th and snuck in, whereas obviously Collingwood not doing well the last few weeks, going from 10 points in front of everybody to almost dropping out of the top 4 completely. So not a great result for them. Great result, obviously, for the Titans women's team. Don't have to talk too much about the men's team, but breaking news, obviously, since obviously this part has been recorded way after the game, it has been confirmed officially that Des Hasler's last year with the Gold Coast Titans will be this year. He will not be coaching the Titans in 2026, and Josh Hannay, who is the assistant coach at both the Queensland Maroons, or at least in the the coaching suite of the Queensland Maroons, and obviously the assistant coach for a little while at Cronulla, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks, has been a assistant coach at the Cowboys. I don't think he's been a head coach in the league so far, but from 2026 for a 3-year deal at this point, Josh Hannay will be the head coach taking over from Des Hasler. But yeah, so it's an interesting situation to be in, obviously. Obviously, we got Scott Sadler, obviously from Penrith fame, including that game-saving tackle in the 2003 grand final. 2003, sorry. I was like, is that right? So Scott Sadler will obviously be the general manager of football. So we've got a few people coming in to the team. Obviously, Anthony Lafranchi, obviously a previous player, a past player of the Titans, has been appointed as head of recruitment as well. So obviously we've got some movement happening. But I think Lafranchi being there is going to be a good thing for this team, because obviously he's played at the team before. He's obviously played under an inaugural head coach in Cartwright. So it'll be interesting to see how this team goes, because if we can break the cycle with this, it'd be great. But obviously, who knows at this point? It's going to be one of those things where it's a new coach again, which obviously for the Titans is not an ideal situation. But in saying that, could be the circuit breaker. We don't know. And with the whole team getting, reevaluated and chopped and changed and all that type of stuff, we'll see what happens. We'll see who ends up being, obviously, the assistant coaches under Josh Hannay for 2026 onward. But yeah, 3-year deal obviously for him. So if the Titans wanted Craig Bellamy, obviously they couldn't wait. At this point, I can understand their decision to move on from Des, but obviously it just feels like it's another situation where the head coach is being blamed. But ultimately, in the way that interviews have been told, it's that it's not the coach that ultimately has been the issue, which I think, especially from talks from the CEO, which is great, because it's past the head coach, because obviously our defense has been terrible, but it's been terrible under Des, but also under Holbrook, even including the finals berth that we had in 2021 under Justin Holbrook. Our defense was average, but obviously was good enough to get into the top 8. Was terrible under Garth Brennan. Was decent under Neil Henry, but was still a bit average. So over the last decade, it has not been a great situation for the Titans. But ultimately, Des' head has been severed, basically, from the head coaching job of the Titans once again. I'm not saying once again, obviously, with Des being shafted. I'm just saying that's another head coach at the Titans that has been basically had to bite the bullet and taken the bullet for the team instead of other things happening at the team. And let's hope that some of the team, some of the players do get moved on, because I think that we need to change this team. Need to bring in some players that actually do want to play for this team, because there's quite a few players at the moment that are being very average. Obviously, we're going to have some turnover, obviously, with Kieran Foran retiring. I think we've got a few players that are moving from the Titans as well. Obviously, Isaac, Tino's brother, Isaac is moving on as well. So trying to get a more of a starting side role at another team. So I don't blame him for moving and departing. Obviously, it seems like David Fafita is also going, which who knows where he's going to. It seems like he's going to South at the moment, but who knows with the competition expanding from 2027 onwards, with the Perth Bears being included, and then obviously in 2028, or at least that's what the plan is supposed to be at this point, for PNG to add their name into the ring of the competition. So we'll see what happens with this, but who knows at this point. But hopefully it's a circuit breaker that spurs the Titans on to make another finals berth. But interesting situations going on with the Titans. Obviously with the girls making it to sixth, obviously, and staying there with results that have gone their way. The Titans men obviously staying on the bottom of the ladder, but Newcastle have a worse for and against at the moment because they got a little bit battered by Brisbane. So there's still a possibility, still a chance to get out of it. Obviously, we play the Dolphins at Suncorp this week. Obviously, with the girls, they also play this week, but they play at home, and they play against the Eels. And then obviously the Giants, we don't know what their opponents are going to be in the first week of the finals. So obviously I think they have a week off this week coming. Let me have a look, because I do have the qualifying finals. And it's September the 4th, so it's not this weekend. It'll be next week. So yeah, so the first qualifying final will obviously be Thursday the 4th, which is obviously Adelaide versus Collingwood. The second one will be on Friday, will be the Geelong Cats at the MCG against the Brisbane Lions. So we know those two at the moment. We obviously know that Fremantle and the Giants have both got home elimination finals. We obviously don't know what the slates are going to be for those. I would imagine Fremantle probably playing on the Saturday and then the Giants playing on the Sunday, but I think it also depends on obviously the Gold Coast Suns at this point, and where their result is going to be on Wednesday, because they've got to travel next week. So I think it'll just depend on the day's rest and obviously the travel for them. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Man 10,100. You guys have a great day or night, and of course, take care.